Today we're going to London and to look at my London Then and Now book, which is the last book I've written, the most recent. And this is the last broadcast in this series, I'm afraid. And so here we go. Maybe it's because I'm not a Londoner that I love London so. Maybe it's because I'm not a Londoner that I think of her wherever I go. I get a funny feeling inside of me just walking up and down. Maybe it's because I'm not a Londoner that I love London town. Well, the people who love London town most, I think, are usually the people who are immigrants to London, like me, from the north. And I think maybe people who always lived in London, despite what the song says in the proper version, they often take London for granted, which I never have done. And like most immigrants from wherever it is, it could be from Jarrow, it could be from Jamaica, London is a place you go to make something of yourself, rather like Dick Whittington did, you know, sort of turn again Whittington, Lord Mayor of London. That's why we go there. And I first went to London in 1967. I arrived in London from Wolverhampton College of Art, and I was absolutely stunned by it all. And I remember it's the height of the hippie era, and a hippie said to me, he said, "Hey man, why don't you," thought I looked a bit earnest, he says, "Why don't you drop out?" I said, "Drop out? I haven't dropped in yet." Maybe it's because I'm a Londoner that I love London so. Maybe it's because I'd like to be a Londoner that I think of her wherever I go. I get a funny feeling inside of me, walking up and down. Maybe it's because I'm not a Londoner that I love London town. Well, why is it that I like it so much? It's because I think when I arrive there, it's an aspirational city. As I said, it's a place you go to make something of yourself. And if you don't do that, what's the point of going there? And I really think this idea of trying to change yourself is important, because when you get there, there's an opportunity for changing, but you think of the place as somewhere that's always been there. It's sort of literally set in stone. It's got some sort of authority to it. It's a place that's always been there and you want to be part of because it's always been there. But in fact, photographing this book, I found that it hadn't always been there. If we look at this picture here, I mean, when you think about, let's say, the Queen overlooking Buckingham Palace, looking out and going to everybody, and you know, the monarch looking out at the crowds. Well, let's just take a look at Buck House, for example. Look at this. There's Buckingham Palace. There's the Queen goes in the centre of that, you see. And looks like it's been there forever, hasn't it? Doesn't it? Well, actually it hasn't. Just over 100 years ago it looked like that. It was completely rebuilt, the front was, by a chap called Aston Webb. But, you know, that's not in the public imagination. People don't know about this. They think it's always been there looking like that, because it was designed to look as it's always there. And if you look at somewhere like this wharf here, you see, with things like that, and a wharf and a sort of like these buildings, industrial buildings, just with old Waterloo Station behind there, and it's at the corner of between Waterloo Bridge and Westminster Bridge. But this is what was built in its place in the early 20th century, and that's County Hall, which was the headquarters of the LCC and then the GLC, and then it was closed down by Mrs. Thatcher, and now it's a great big hotel. And so these sort of things that you think are there, this idea of permanence isn't there at all. And talking of Waterloo, what have we got here? Let's see. I've got something here, I'm sure. Oh yes, what about this? Millions of people swarming like flies round Waterloo Underground. But Terry and Julie cross over the river where they feel safe and sound, and they don't need no friends. As long as they gaze on Waterloo sunset, they are in paradise. Well, for somebody arriving in London from the provinces, it was paradise really, to go to a place with such glamour to it. I mean, it had so much glamour, the glamour rubbed off on me when I had a flat in Wolverhampton. Nobody ever wanted to come and stay, but as soon as I got a flat, in a student flat, shared in the old Brompton Road in South Kensington, I suddenly became very popular, and yet I was the same person. It was extraordinary. One of the things I like about London is the fact it is so chaotic. It's a sort of like a Dardist in a way, and one of the reasons it feels like that, apart from the people though, is the look of the place. It's almost like a village, when in fact it is a collection of villages all joined together. There aren't any great big impressive boulevards really, and as there are in say Paris, that run from one side of the city to the other, or St. Petersburg or Washington, those sort of places, Beijing, these huge boulevards and avenues. There aren't anything like that. It's just sort of grown up a bit organically really, which is what it has. Just as I say, these villages just joined together, no overall planning, but that means that you get some really good surprises. It's more like Rome in that sense. You can walk around a corner and there is a great big impressive building coming out of an alleyway, or around a corner of a busy street or something. This, for example, which is the City Hall for the whole City of London, which is the Mansion House that's been there for centuries. And if you look at that, you can see that was in the 19th century. Look, it's crowded with all these things. You'd have any other city, it's Paris or something, you have a great, like the Madeleine, you have a great big boulevard and sort of squares and things in front of it and all that sort of thing. But nothing like that here. It's just got to jostle its way alongside all the other sort of commercial things. And even today it's still like that. I mean, they put a new building there at the back there, you can see right next to it. It's very strange that sort of thing happens. Other cities I don't think would do that. They think it looks like they haven't got the money, but it's because that's how they like it. Or this one, the British Museum, you see. That's a huge edifice, and this photograph was taken sometime not long after it was completed in the 1850s. Look at these chaps with the top hats on. It's wonderful. Aren't they splendid fellows? And here it is today. That great big edifice, you see. Okay, the interior has been remodelled, but look at that, wonderful. But that great edifice is still there. But the strange thing of it is, you walk around the corner and you think this is going to overlook a great big plaza or something, but it doesn't. It overlooks a narrow side street, which is called Great Russell Street, but there's nothing great about Russell Street. It's just a fairly narrow London street with this huge building on it. And that's what meant one of the sort of lovely things about London, I think. What can we sing about that? Let's see. Oh, here we go. British Museum. A foggy day in London town had me low and had me down. I viewed the morning with such alarm. The British Museum had lost its charm. How long, I wondered, could this thing last? But the age of miracles hadn't passed. For suddenly I saw you there, and through foggy London town the sun was shining everywhere. of the things that defines London, which hardly anybody can remember now, not allowed to do, but it still sort of defines it in a way, is the London Blitz, which knocked out great parts of the city, especially in the East End, but others as well. And I remember as a child going to St Paul's when I was taken about 7 or 8 years old to audition for the choir there, and I remember seeing the bomb sites and the shattered buildings around St Paul's, which I'll never forget, the blackened buildings and things, and then flowers growing between the things. And it's something which, you know, not many people will be left to remember the aftermath of the war, but I remember it very much. And the war is still very much something that is remembered in a way in London, in the actual look of the place. I mean, if you go, say, here, I found this lovely colour photograph, I think it's 1941, yes, of the Bank of England and the Royal Exchange next to one another, as they are still, and there they are, and you can see this what's happened here. Well, in a blitz, a bomb hit the bank station, underground station, and many hundred people were killed or more. It was terrible. Went down there, the bomb penetrated the roof and went down, and all people standing on the platform. They were in a rush hour, and there you can see them having to rebuild it, you see. And here you can see the same place now, with the skyscrapers behind all these modern buildings, some of a challenging design, some of them, but the same place with some of the continuity and some of the new things going on. And talking about that bombing, I mean, there's other things to remind you. I mean, this, for example, St Clement Danes Church in the Stand, you know, there's another song, you know, oranges and lemons say the bells of St Clement's. There we are, you see, and it's a lovely building. I mean, that was built, this was photographed in the 1900, but that was heavily bombed in the war, and this remained, but a lot of it was bombed, and the reconstruction was paid for by the RAF, and since then it became the RAF Chapel Church, and in front of it are statues of the great heroes of the leaders of the RAF there, for example. And this one, which was put up in more recent years, of a chap called Bomber Harris, or Butcher Harris he was called, Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris, who ran the RAF Bomber Command, and of course he was the one who gave orders for civilians to be bombed in what's called area bombing, to dehouse the workers, as it was called, working class houses particularly, because they were close together. And of course that bombing is still very controversial, but you can imagine how Londoners felt about that. So that statue that went up was something, a sort of riposte in a way, although it is still controversial to this day. But the idea of London being, very a sort of a bombed city, spirits were kept alive during the war, particularly by lots of songs, Siegfried Line and so on and so forth, but particularly by Noel Coward. Let's try a Noel Coward one. There's a little city flower, every spring unveiling, growing in the crevices by some London railing. Although it has a Latin name, in town and countryside, we in England call it London Pride. London Pride has been handed down to us. London Pride is a flower that's free. London Pride means our own dear town to us, and our pride it forever will be. In our city darkened now, street and square and crescent, we can feel our living past in our shadowed present. Ghosts behind our starlit Thames, who lived and loved and died, keep throughout the ages London pride. Every blitz your resistance toughening, from the Ritz to the Anchor and Crown. Nothing ever could override the pride of London town. of course, London has renewed itself since that time, not just because of the bombing, although it was started off by that. And in 1951, the government decided after the war to give what they called a tonic to the nation, and they built something called the Festival of Britain on the South Bank, and it was the beginning of the renewal of London, really. And I got this colour photograph of the Festival of Britain, the South Bank, which I think is rather splendid, and you can see there on the left the skyline by Powell and Moyer, which appears to be, I mean, it's got some very thin wires, but the jokesters used to say, well, you know, it's a bit like the British economy after the war, no visible means of support. But it was a centrepiece of the Festival of Britain, and the people came from all over the world, really, to this, to see the Festival of Britain and see the different sort of thing, manufactures made in Britain and things like this, set up by the Labour government. It's a huge success, the Festival of Britain, and they had these wonderful posters, such as this one here, and it meant the beginning of the renewal of London. And of course now there you've got the London Eye in the same spot. I don't know how many people on there would know it was a site of the Festival of Britain. I doubt not many, very many. Time moves on, and here you've got another example, Blitzed London. This is what I was talking about, the flowers growing in a bomb site. This photograph was taken in 1960 still huge bomb site area, still not built up. This one was in the centre is the tower that's only left of the Cripplegate Church, St Giles, but that was going to be the site of the biggest housing development in Europe at the time, one of the biggest in the world, and that of course was the Barbican building. And there's the church now restored with its chancel and everything back, but the building, and now it's surrounded by the Barbican, this huge construction, which, as you can see, the towers there, the Barbican Towers, that's one of them, and all those things, and that's a grade 2 listed building now. It's the whole Barbican development, which it was really kick-started the redevelopment of the City of London. And then you've got here, this one here is another one. Oh, I like this one. This is old Highbury Stadium, taken in the about 2005. Sorry, that's the one of the Highbury Stadium, Islington, and it got a bit too cramped for them, so they sold it for housing development. And there you can see it here in the foreground here. Now where the pitch was are now gardens for the people living there. But this is the only then and now which is in one shot, actually, then and now in one shot, because behind it is their new home, the Emirates Stadium. So there you go, then and now in one shot. I was pleased to get that. I thought it was great getting that one. And here's another one, the redevelopment of London. Here we are here, filling about with this book. Oh yes, a gasometer. How lovely. And that was down near the Isle of Dogs, in the Thames. Is full of sort of chemical waste and terrible things, digging all that out. But that became the site of what was the Millennium Dome, or the O2, as you can see there. That has replaced that huge development there. And of course the biggest building is this one here. Well, that wasn't big. This one, you see, was built in 1975. You know, so modern thing, you think it'd still be there. It wasn't. It's only been there since 1975, because not all that long later it was torn down and replaced by this, the Shard, the tallest building in the country. So it shows how the renewal of London goes on. It progresses, and in fact that sort of renewal is part of, as I said, the renewal of people who are aspirational, who came to better themselves. And it's made London, I suppose, I don't know, I mean, it was the capital of empire, the largest empire the world's ever seen, but it seems to be right that, in fact, one of the greatest things about its renewal, its cultural renewal, is the fact that many of the people who came there as immigrants come from the former empire. and from other parts of the provinces like myself. And they come there, as I said before, they want to get on, they want to change themselves, they want to renew. And when I left the Slade in 1970, I didn't know what job I was going to do, and this record was this Jamaican record was the top of the hit parade, which I always think about it. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want, but you must try. You must try. You'll succeed at last. Persecution you must spare. Win or lose, you get your share. Got your mind set on a dream. You can get it though harder they seem now. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want, but you must try, try and try. Rome wasn't built in a day. Opposition will come your way, but the hotter the battle you see, it's the sweeter victory now. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. You must try. You must try. Try. You'll succeed at last. That's the last of these broadcasts, and you can actually watch them on YouTube. They're under Vaughan Socks, and I want to take this point of thanking Hattie Grills, my daughter, for putting it. I don't know how to do YouTube, but she's got them all there on under Vaughan Socks. So if you want to watch them, and if you want to, here's a plug, want to buy these books, any of these books, you can get them on Amazon. I hope you do that. But I also wanted to thank my wife Polly, because it was her who said to me over a year ago now, at the beginning of the lockdown, she says, why don't you, when you play the piano and sing that, why don't you put that on out on Facebook? People might think it's enjoyable. I said, they won't listen by singing, do they? I said, it's terrible. She said, it doesn't matter. It'll be great. It'll be fine. I don't know if she's right. Anyway, you've had to listen to it for this long. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. But we must try, 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 try. You'll succeed at last. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.